We know that anytime we disobey God's law or do not follow his commands for our life, it is a picture of rebellion. It's called a transgression or a sin, and sin certainly has consequences. Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Tuesday. When God was leading his people out of Egypt and into the promised land, he performed many miracles to protect them, to deliver them, even to provide for them. Each time, God was very clear with instructions about how they would act to receive God's blessings and receive what God would provide for them. He used Moses to speak 10 plagues into existence in the nation of Egypt. He commanded Moses to stretch out his staff over the Red Sea, and the waters parted for them to go across on dry land. Even when God's people needed water at Rephidim, God called to Moses and said, "Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it that the people may drink." And Moses struck the rock, miraculously bringing forth water. But we must realize that God is very specific about his instructions to bring about miracles. Later in Numbers chapter 20, when his people again needed water, they were out in the wilderness of Zin, God spoke to Moses and said, "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water to them out of the rock." You see, this was a different command, but bringing about the same result. God wanted to prove himself omnipotent and able to deliver whatever they needed. He had already furnished manna for them in the wilderness. He had even brought quail whenever they cried out and wanted meat to eat. But now, with this great need for water, God said, "I will show them that I can even furnish water from within a rock in a dry and thirsty land." This was a different situation. It was a different command for Moses to speak to that rock. Even after Moses and Aaron had gone to the temple and fell on their faces before God to find out his answers for this dilemma, Moses was still angry. He was angry with the people and their whining. You see, the people had contended with Moses after he had delivered them from their slavery in Egypt. They blamed him for bringing them to this wilderness. They would probably die of thirst. So Moses acted out of his own anger, out of his frustration with these discontent and unthankful people. In Numbers chapter 20 and verse 11, the Bible says, Moses said, "Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" And then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly. Notice his phrase, "Must we bring water for you out of this rock?" The people may not have known this was disobedient to God's command to speak to the rock. All they cared about was getting water for them and their flock, so they saw it as success. But God knows our very heart and the motivation for our actions. He saw Moses' actions as rebellious to God, as disobedient to his command, following his own selfish lusts before these people, and God spoke a judgment for his sin. He said, "Because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given you." God would not allow Moses to enter the promised land with the nation of Israel. It's interesting because Moses did not argue. He realized his sin. After all his labor and his faithfulness to lead these people, he is now being judged by God as rebellious, just like he had accused the people of being. And now he is not allowed to enter into the promised land. You see, there is a consequence for sin. We have to recognize that.